Week 15 of the NFL season kicks off tonight, so it's time to make our picks for every game today on the Locked On NFL Scouting Podcast.
You are Locked On NFL Scouting with the Draft Dudes, your daily podcast for NFL and college football scouting. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's better than this? It's guys being dudes here on the Locked On NFL Scouting Podcast. We're the Draft Dudes. I'm Joe Marino from Locked On Bills. He's Kyle Krabs from Locked On Dolphins. And we are your NFL experts here with you daily to talk team building across the league on the Locked On NFL Scouting Podcast with the Draft Dudes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We'd like to thank you for making Locked On NFL Scouting your first listen every day, and a big welcome and shout out to our everydayers. You know who you are. Those of you who never miss a single episode, we appreciate y'all being here very, very much. This episode is brought to you by Prize Picks, the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use code LockedOnNFL for a first deposit match up to $100.
Joe, week 15, playoff clinching scenarios on the line for a number of teams. Baltimore, the top few teams in the NFC, all at hand. So San Francisco, Philadelphia, Dallas, Detroit, I think all in play as far as clinching scenarios. A chance to avoid a Levy Grail for those teams. Very exciting for them.
Yeah, that's got to be the motivation, right? It's not the extra game checks or the postseason, all that. Yeah, you don't want to have a Levy Grail episode about you. Kyle, I got to be aggressive, man. I fell behind. We were different on 2 games last week, and you got them both. So now you're 4 up for the year. And where I find myself disappointed is some of those games where I felt like I kind of wanted to do it. If I would have done it, yeah. So I think we're going to trust my gut this week a little bit more than usual. So
this is desperate times, desperate measures, I guess, because we have 4. Are we doing playoffs?
I don't know, man.
You got potentially 4 weeks left. It feels a little bit like the 2 truths and a lie from last year's cycle.
Oh man,
I got out in front, and it just kind of stayed there. So bless you. I'm gonna try to take good process as best as I can. Try not to be different on too many games, but I will not fall in line with you just because you're following your gut.
I'm gonna try to pick who I think is gonna win the game. That's what I'm gonna try to do.
Right. If you did do that, last week could have been very interesting because last week was one of the more chaotic weeks all season.
Yeah.
So if you're unfamiliar, we're going to pick the games. Joe and I are going to do pick them straight up. The show is picking against the spread. Joe, year to date, you have successfully picked 124 games, which is good for a 58.7% success rate. I know 60% is that big number in your head. I've correctly picked 128 games correctly, which is 60.6% of games. And the show against the spread has correctly picked 114 games correctly, which is good for 54%. So the show is hitting 54% against the spread. That's arguably more impressive than either one of our numbers.
Yeah,
but the show was 7-8 last week, courtesy of Bills, the Texans, the Lions, the Jaguars, the Ravens, the Dolphins. The show did correctly pick, however, the Patriots upset over the Steelers, and the show did also pick the Giants to cover the 6.5-point spread to close the week. So the show started and ended the week with a bang.
It's a tough week. Tough week of games, a lot of weird matchups. So we'll find some things out.
We have Thursday night football. We have Saturday night football. We have Saturday football. Then we have a disproportionate amount of 1 o'clock games, followed by 3, 4 o'clock games. And then we have Sunday night football, Monday night football. So more buckets. I guess let's start with Thursday night and Saturday and see where we go from a time perspective. Starting with Chargers, Raiders. And the Raiders are at home. They're favored on FanDuel by 3.5 points. And the Chargers don't have Justin Herbert. They won't have Keenan Allen. Austin Eckler's been meh. Their offensive line's banged up. The Raiders have teased a quarterback change. Who the hell knows? This is an impossible game to pick. For the record, the Chargers are getting the pick from the show, however, to cover the 3.5-point spread.
I'm just going to go with the home team, Raiders.
Josh Jacobs not playing, Joe?
It's a mere lifetime, baby. Zeus.
You know what really chaps my rear end about that? One of my hot takes at the beginning of the season was that Josh Jacobs would be the only player on the Raiders to have more than 100 rushing yards on the season.
Mm-hmm.
And now it's going to get popped because Jacobs got hurt in week 15. Because that's a factual statement right now. I think Trey Tucker's their next highest leading rusher. Because they run a couple of rounds with him.
Yeah, going with the home team.
All right. I'll play ball, Joe. I'll pick the Chargers. Easton
Here we go.
Here quarterback change. They've been stale offensively. I think the Raiders losing their running game will not help them. Give me the Chargers. I'll ride the Chargers. I'll be disappointed one more time this year for the Chargers, and then I'll never pick them again.
Especially on a Thursday night difference. This is where I've really made ground up all year, so I'm happy to have
it. If I just fell in line on Thursday night,
right, you'd be up 7 games.
I'd be up twice as many games as I am. Saturday, the 1:00 game, the Bengals, another backup quarterback, Jake Browning, hosting the Minnesota Vikings, who have made a quarterback change. They benched Josh Dobbs. It's now Nick Mullins, starting quarterback for Minnesota.
Go Vikings.
Cincinnati's favored by 2.5 at home, by the way.
Yeah, Vikings shut out the Raiders last week. Blitz aggressive defense, obviously. Yeah, that's going to be an issue. I'm going with the Bengals at home. I think they've shown a little punch with Jake Browning. I don't have great confidence in it, but it's about a third quarterback for the Vikings and them on the road. So give me the Bengals at home.
I am also picking the Bengals at home. I think they have showcased an ability to get the ball in their playmakers' hands. I think they can mitigate pressure to some degree with their screen game. Chase Brown's giving you a little life in the run game. I don't like the matchup with Minnesota's corners. I know this defense is very exotic. They run a very high pressure, high stress defensive style. But I think you have the skill players in Cincinnati to manufacture enough kinds of touches that are big-time mismatches. So I'll fall into the line with the Bengals as well. The show is picking the Bengals to cover 2.5 points at home as well. So we are all in on the Bengals here on the show. Confidence level is not high.
Find those completions, Jake. Just dump it down. But really, I'm going for the Vikings, so I hope I'm wrong here.
Yeah, that's got to be a weird place to be in, because we're going to talk about a couple of teams here, including the next 2 games, that you have a very clear vested rooting interest for the big picture of the AFC picture. So let's go to the 4:00 game, which is Pittsburgh at Indianapolis. Somebody's going to drop a game that will be helpful to you. These are, I believe, 2 7-6 football teams.
Yeah. Well, every team that's 5 through 11 or 6 through 11 in the AFC is 7-6.
7-6.
All right. Try to find reasons to pick either team here.
Indy's favored by 1.5 at home.
I mean, can the Colts out-Steeler the Steelers?
Do you mean that in a good way or a bad way?
I mean that in a bad way. That was a shot at the Steelers.
Right.
Do you have some convictions here?
I'm going to fall in line with the home team. I mean, Pittsburgh offensively was just a disaster against New England. No creativity offensively. I know we threw them a parade because they got 400 yards a few weeks ago when they fired Matt Canada. The Colts looked lifeless on the road against Cincinnati. I think they're primed for a big bounce back. I just don't trust Pittsburgh's quarterback situation. I think Indy's got the physical guys up front on the defensive line to help kind of stymie where Pittsburgh has found some life, which is running the ball. And I don't think Pittsburgh can capitalize on Indianapolis suspect secondary. So give me the Colts at home. I think I like the quarterback playing for the Colts better than the quarterback playing for the Steelers, too.
Yeah. Colts at home.
All right, Colts at home. Which brings us to Denver at Detroit. Detroit playoff clinching opportunity. Detroit is 9-4. Detroit lost by 2 touchdowns to Chicago after a few weeks ago needing a miracle comeback to avoid losing to Chicago the first time that they played. Detroit gave up 28 to New Orleans the week before that. Detroit lost at home to Green Bay, gave up 29 points the week before that. Team not trending in the right direction as compared to where Denver, aside of that loss to Houston, which they gave the game away with turnovers, is very much found themselves.
I'm picking the Lions, and let me tell you why. I think they can run the ball. This is why I picked Houston to beat Denver. I think they can lean into this rushing attack. They're at home. They're a little bit different team at home, and I have little confidence. But if I'm trying to find the one thing on either side of the ball that I think is a differentiating thing, I think their rushing offense for Detroit. They'll be committed to it. Denver's still susceptible to the run game. Give me the Lions at home.
I just got to play the hot hand. I'm going Broncos.
All right. So that's two different already. We haven't even gotten to Sunday. So this should be fun.
Show has Detroit covering -4.
All right. Note there. All right, stick with us, folks. But this show is sponsored by BetterHelp. This time of year can be challenging for some people, and it's natural to feel some sadness or even anxiety about it. But adding something new and positive to your life can counteract some of those feelings. Therapy can be a bright spot amid all the stress and change, something to look forward to make you feel grounded and to give you the tools necessary to manage everything that's going on. It's helpful for learning positive coping skills and how to set boundaries. It empowers you to be the very best version of yourself. It's just not for those who have experienced major trauma. So if you've been thinking about starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. All you do is fill out a brief questionnaire. That'll get you matched with a licensed therapist. And you can switch therapists at any time for no additional charge. Find your bright spot this season with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOn today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOn.
Giants at Saints. First 1 o'clock Sunday game that we have. No clue. Giants come out on top against the Packers on Monday Night Football. Tommy DeVito. I will now give Tommy DeVito all the flowers we want to give him.
Can't stop, won't stop, can he? He's playing good.
Can't stop. It's a fun storyline. Him and Brian Daboll, the bromance we didn't know that we needed. Do I trust New Orleans at all? No. Is their defense against the Giants' offense a huge advantage matchup? Yes. New Orleans is favored at home on FanDuel by 6 points. The show has the Giants covering 6 points. And if that raises eyebrows, the show had the Giants doing the same thing last week to Green Bay, and they won the game. So no confidence points is this whichever way it picks either.
I think I'm going to roll with Tommy DeVito and the Giants to go down to New Orleans and win this football game. I just think situationally, New Orleans is really sloppy. They stink in the red zone. DeVito's got a little magic to him right now, and he's playing with confidence, and that's a big deal, right? And I think this team has a little momentum that they found. I'm just going to roll with it. Kind of like you're rolling with Denver, I'm rolling with the Giants.
Well, and in the spirit of rolling with the hot hand, I'll jump on board with you. We'll take the.
You didn't want to go down on this one, did you?
No, we'll take the chicken cutlet train and we'll ride it all the way. We're all the way in on the show here. I got both against the spread and let's pick them on the Giants, which takes us to yet another zero confidence game. Chicago, another hot team at Cleveland, the 8-5 Cleveland Browns with Joe Flacco at quarterback, who lost another 4 starters this week to injured reserve. It feels like with Jedrick Wills and Grant Delpit and Maurice Hurst. The Browns are as banged up as any team in the league, yet they're sitting here at 8-5. They got a big win last week, an upset win against the Jacksonville Jaguars, although they were favored by 3 points. But Jacksonville, I think a lot of people would just casually look at that game and pick them. It's at home for Cleveland. I don't know if that matters. FanDuel has Cleveland favored by 3 points. The show has Cleveland covering the 3-point spread. I think I'm going to pick the Bears.
I'm picking the Bears. I know that Cleveland gets to play Lamar Jackson, so they see mobile quarterbacks, but I think maybe when you consider some of the lesser performance from the Browns defense, it's been against some of these quarterbacks that can run around a little bit. I think the Bears have some confidence on defense. And yeah, I mean, there's a lot of transition with this Browns lineup all year and again this week. Like, I feel like that catches up with them. The Bears take this game, and the Bears are playing inspired lately. Like they're not packing it in at all.
Yeah, was skeptical last week about Chicago and talked about them before the bye and how well they played defensively against Minnesota. Well, they came out against Detroit and played an inspired game. They won that football game 28-13. I think the injuries catch up with Cleveland. I'm also riding the Bears with you. The show is all by its lonesome, which takes us to Falcons, Panthers. Panthers at home. Falcons on the road, favored by 3 points. Falcons, right?
Yeah, I mean, the Falcons let me down a ton of times this year, but I'm not picking the Panthers.
Yeah, and you could say this about Atlanta too. They kind of unceremoniously lost to Tampa Bay, that late drive in that game, but they did find their offensive output to a degree, which I think if they can call upon moving forward, it's going to help them in their bid to win this division. Now,
Didn't Drake London and Kyle Pitts have a touchdown?
Yes, and they got a lot of yardage too. Like, you have to play that way moving forward, and I think if they do, they can make this divisional race really interesting. But we're both leaning on them to win this game straight up. The show has Carolina covering 3-point spread. So show thinks it's going to be a close game. Speaking of Tampa Bay, that's our next 1 o'clock game. They're on the road in Green Bay against the Packers, so the Bays are playing each other. And Green Bay at home is favored by 3.5 points. The show likes Tampa to cover that, but
I like Packers at home. Bring that team from from Florida up to Wisconsin in December. I like that. I'm looking for a bounce back out of Green Bay this week. I think they get it done.
Bummer performance for Green Bay. We just got done getting real hot and singing their praises on how we think they're going to make a big time run, and then they dropped the game to New York the way that they did at the end of the game. But it felt like that was like that for a lot of teams last week, so I'm not going to react to it too much. I will also pick Green Bay to win this game. I know they're continue to be another team that's super banged up, but Jordan Love's playing generally good football for that sample size over the last 2 months, so I'll pick him against that Tampa offense that I just don't think can consistently score enough points. Jets, Dolphins. Dolphins at home, coming off their own heartbreaking loss that they let a team off the hook on. Dolphins favored on FanDuel right now by 8.5 points. Second match between these two divisional rivals. The first one came on Black Friday when the Dolphins played Tim Boyle. Zach Wilson now quarterback for the Jets.
I think the Jets are better equipped this time around with Zach Wilson playing quarterback. But, I mean, in Miami's really tough. If Miami runs the ball, I think they're going to be fine in this game. If they want to come out and chase a bunch of passing yards, I think that's going to be trouble for them. But I think the smart pick is Miami at home.
Well, I think the good news is this is a 1 o'clock game, so Mike McDaniel will probably be less tempted to chase a lot of passing yards and a lot of points and just do what's working for you. I will say injuries have me a little unconfident, as would be the case anytime you give up 15 points in 3 minutes. And I don't know if you've noticed, but the bar light on behind me hasn't been on all week. And I'm actually I don't have a lot of clothes that aren't Dolphins clothes. I've been wearing not Dolphins clothes all week because I've been so mad about the game. You have any idea how mad I have to be these days to wear a Draft Network thing? And I'm wearing that instead of the Dolphins stuff. So I'm pissed off at this team. Now, I will pick the Dolphins to win the game, but I am leery about Tyreek Hill's banged up. Teron Armstead's banged up. Javon Holland hasn't played since the last time we saw the Jets. Deshaun Elliott's in concussion protocol. Connor Williams is on injured reserve. Lee Meikenberg, the backup center, has a calf injury. Wouldn't have practiced on Wednesday if they practiced. Raheem Mostert didn't practice, although that's kind of been par for the course for him on Wednesdays.
Are you picking the Jets, or what's going on?
No, I'm just saying it's a game that I don't like 8.5. The show's going to pick Miami at minus 8.5 at home. But I could see, and some of this is just traumatized Dolphins fan. Last year, they lost 5 straight. They dropped that game in catastrophic fashion last week. They're going to have to get back on the horse and stem this thing because the schedule is going to get real tough for them in the final 3 games. So I'm picking Miami, but the fact that they're so banged up on the offensive line does not have me feeling good about it.
Can we get the formality of this game out of the way before the next break? Chiefs, Patriots.
What's the formality?
We're both. Well, it's Chiefs are favored by 8.5 on FanDuel. Yeah. We're both going to pick the Chiefs. They're not going to lose 3 in a row.
Yeah, and the show's picking them to cover the 8.5 point spread against New England too.
Yeah, so maybe you think that the Chiefs are going to cover the 8.5 point spread against New England. Well, check out FanDuel, because as the weather gets colder, the NFL offers stay hot on FanDuel, because right now new customers can get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 money line bet. That'd be a pretty good one. If you want to get the $150 in bonus bets, put $5 down on the Chiefs money line. And I think you're going to be okay there and get a bunch of money for some bonus bets. It's $150 if your team wins. So if you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get in on the action. The app is so easy to use. There's a ton of different things that you can bet on, including spreads, player props, over-unders, and more. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL.
Texans at Titans. Titans at home favored by 2.5 points.
And they're wearing the Oilers jerseys.
Yeah, the ultimate kind of sign of disrespect.
Man, it's tough, right? That's tough. Man, you got a good close look at Tennessee this past week.
250 yards of offense and 13 points through 56 minutes.
Right. This is their second matchup against Houston this year. If I'm not, surely this is, right?
Yes, I believe so.
I kind of like that.
For the Titans?
Yeah, I think that helps. I think that helps Tennessee.
Well, there's also we need to acknowledge the.
No, this is their first matchup. This is their first matchup. They play 2 of the next 3 games against each other.
Yeah, they go. Houston goes Titans, Browns, Titans, Colts.
What a weird stretch.
Give me the Titans. CJ Stroud got that really ugly looking concussion against the Jets last week. I think that team showcased some of their youth a little bit. I also think that the Titans can use that as a really big springboard for them down the final stretch of games. They're going to be on the outside looking in on the playoffs, but they low key have scored 28 points the last 2 weeks, and they finish with Seattle as well as Houston twice and then Jacksonville. So I think they'll be a little fired up. They beat the Panthers, then they lost in overtime to the Colts, then they beat the Dolphins. I think they got a little something brewing. Give me the Titans.
Yeah, and they should have beat the Colts too. Titans at home.
The show, when factoring in the CJ Stroud injury as well, is going to take the Titans. So we're all in on the Titans here. The 49ers in Arizona, favored by 12.5 points against the Arizona Cardinals. We're picking the 49ers.
Yeah, they're rolling. 49ers. What's the
show?
Show
has 49ers covering 12.5.
All right.
So we're all in there as well. So after a lot of drama in the first half of the schedule this week, we've fallen in line in the last 4 games. Everybody's in lockstep. Will that continue? I imagine that it will. The Rams are hosting the Commanders. The Rams are favored at home by 6.5 points. The show likes the Rams to cover 6.5 points. I like the Rams to win the game, Joe.
Yeah, me too. I think teams that are going to go
There you
in
go.
opposite directions here. The Rams are like definitely right in the mix here to be one of the playoff teams. I don't think they drop this one at home to Washington, who's personnel issues, coaching issues. I think McVay's going to run circles around Rivera when it comes to this offense-defense matchup.
Yeah, I'd be inclined to agree with you. And they had a bummer of a loss. They gave Baltimore a really tough game last week and fell just short in overtime. They had a chance to get the ball back. They had some communication issues late down the stretch that cost them. I think they'll bounce back. I do think this is a Rams team that is going to make a real push for one of those last playoff spots in the NFC. Dallas at Buffalo. Buffalo favored at home by 1.5. The show likes Buffalo to cover that and win the game.
I'm going to pick the Bills, and let me tell you why. I think the Bills have kind of been in this position where they've had to go on some late season runs, and they've done it. But this being a home game, I think, is what the big difference is. The Bills have lost one game at Highmark Stadium. It was the Denver game where they turned it over 4 times and, of course, had the big penalty at the end of the game that allowed the Broncos to have 2 chances at a game-winning field goal. But the Cowboys have 3 losses. They're all on the road at Arizona, at San Francisco, at Philadelphia. And they average scoring 40 points per game at home. They average scoring 24 points per game on the road. Bringing those boys from Dallas up to Western New York in December. I don't think it's going to be crazy elements, but it's going to be chilly. I'm just going to ride with the Bills on this one.
I'm manifesting here. I'm picking the Cowboys.
For
no other reason than I need the Cowboys to win the game.
Well, I was hoping that this would be one of our different ones.
Yep. I don't blame you. The Buffalo's pathway to winning, as you've outlined, I think there's a very easily foreseeable path in which the Bills win the game. But I am selfishly manifesting here.
And they're feeling themselves after that Philly win. The Dallas Cowboys are.
Yep. So it's going to go one of 2 ways, right? You're either going to have the letdown, or you're going to come in a little unfocused. And Buffalo's feet are on the fire right now. They got to go. They know they got to go.
Yep.
So you better be ready for them. The show, as we mentioned, likes Buffalo to cover the 1.5 spread.
Kyle against the world.
Baltimore out in Jacksonville facing the sliding Jaguars. It feels like that entire division is hot except for Jacksonville.
Right. It was the opposite of last year, right?
Don't look now, but Jacksonville's sitting at 8-5. They've lost their last 2. They lost to Cleveland by 4. And then they lost to the Bengals by 3 on Monday Night Football. So they've had a tough break. They were tied at the end of week 12. They were tied for the 1 seed in the conference. Now they're definitively behind the 8 ball. They're looking down at a couple of teams that are only a game behind them in the AFC South standings. And now you got big bad Baltimore coming to town. Baltimore's favored by 3.5 points on the road. But on FanDuel, the show likes Baltimore to cover 3.5 points, and I like the Ravens to win the game.
Yeah, I think I'd like Jacksonville's defense actually against Baltimore. I think it's a decent matchup for them. But Jacksonville on offense with no Christian Kirk, right? Zay Jones is banged up again.
Yep.
I don't know, man. Baltimore leads the NFL in sacks. I just like the Ravens. I like the Ravens to go down and win this game.
Which brings us to our last game of the week. Philadelphia at Seattle. Philadelphia on a little bit of a losing skid of their own. They lost their last 2. Favored by 3.5 points. And they're visiting a team that is in the midst of their own really ugly slide and stretch with Seattle, who lost to San Francisco. And they lost to Dallas. And they lost to San Francisco. They lost to the LA Rams. Seattle was looking really good for a stretch, and we talked about this schedule kind of defining this team's season, and it has not gone to plan. I think we'll get a desperate Seattle team. I think it'll be close, but I'm still inclined to pick. I still think Philadelphia's the better football team, and I'd be surprised if they lost 3 in a row.
I hate this game. This game was in Philly, it'd be an easy choice. This game's in Seattle, though.
Mm-hmm.
They showed a little punch. They were a little bit more competitive against San Francisco last week than I kind of thought they would be. I think, man, I'm picking Seattle. I'm picking Seattle to win this game.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that
I don't think Seattle. I don't think Seattle. For the most part, Philly hasn't played good football over the last like 3-4 weeks.
Tell me has Seattle played good football the last 3-4 weeks?
No, but I feel like
games, they got waxed in most of them.
Desperation at home. I think that could be a difference maker for them.
We are different on 4 games this week.
All right. Can't wait to
Jeff
go 2-2.
Claw it all back here.
It's not going to happen. It's going to be 2-2. At best, I get 3 out of 4.
Well, if one of them's Thursday night football, you took the home team, so you'll get that one for sure. That
lock it in
is going to do it for our preview of Week 15. We hope you and your team, as of right now, I think 30 teams are still mathematically eligible to make the playoffs. I hope you guys are enjoying playing meaningful football games. If you are not, we have already dedicated an entire show on this program to you the last 2 weeks, so we hope you have enjoyed that instead.
And the top 10 prospects we've done.
And the top 10 prospects. So we've come at you from a lot of angles. Tomorrow's Takes on Takes. We didn't tease this at the top of the show, so shame on us. But leave your comments here on this episode of the show with your hottest takes for this week, and we will react. As Joe likes to say, we will give you our take on your take on Takes on Takes tomorrow on the YouTube channel. So you have that to look forward to. I'm Kyle Krabs. He's Joe Marino. We appreciate you guys checking out the show. Make it a great rest of your day. We are out of here.